Well, hello, welcome to another edition of Take 5. There's the symbol. We are in John chapter 13, verse 31. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him at once. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me. And just as I said to the Jews, so now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come." Alright, Jesus is using some figurative language here, but he's really just talking about his death, his crucifixion. That's the glorification of the Son of Man. You wouldn't think it would be so. Yet, because of what he was doing, dying for the sins of the world, basically destroying the power that death has on the world, that's glory. And God is glorified in him, and he's glorified in God, and God's going to glorify him in himself. They're all interchangeable because Jesus was God, see, and Jesus is God. God's Son, but also fully God, and yet the Son of Man. So, if you can grasp all that and really figure it out and understand it, you're better off than me. I'll just read it and just to tell you that's what he's talking about. When he says you will seek me, and where I'm going you cannot come, that's because he was going into the world after death, and they wouldn't be able to follow him at that point. Of course, we're all going to eventually die, and if we are believers, if we're saved, we will spend eternity with Jesus. But he was just talking about the immediate situation. When he says glorify him at once, he's talking about the fact that crucifixion is going to be basically the very next day. Verse 34, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another." Now, verse 34 was not entirely a new commandment. The Old Testament had said to love your neighbor as yourself, and when someone asked Jesus what the two greatest commandments were, he said love God, and then the second one was love your neighbor as yourself. So he's not really saying a brand new commandment, but it's new in the sense that it's a new one he's giving to them personally. And he's got a new standard, just as I have loved you. Now remember, he showed them the extent of it when he washed their feet. Go back early in the chapter and you will see this. So he's saying, in the same way, I was willing to do the lowest thing. I was willing to do the most menial thing. What would seem to be something I shouldn't have to do. I was willing to get down on my hands and knees and wash your feet. I'm God, and I was willing to get down on my hands and knees and wash your feet. That's what he was saying. He's saying, that's the standard I want you to have toward one another. Now, if that's the standard Jesus says we're to have toward one another, what is it we would hold back? What is it we wouldn't sacrifice? What is it we would not give up for our brother? So actually a very new commandment, because it's still new for us today, because we don't quite get there the way Jesus did, do we? We're not quite all the way there. So it's a new command every time we read it, but we still need to shoot for it. In verse 35, "By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." You want to glorify God. You want people to be able to say, hey, these are the people of God. This is a real church of God right here. It'll be by the way you love one another. It's not going to be so much by your doctrine, although that's important. It's not going to even be by all the great things you do, although it's important to do great things and to serve people and serve the community. That's part of love. But basically, how do you treat each other? Is there a lot of fighting? Is there a lot of bickering? Is there a lot of tattletale kind of stuff going on? Is there division? Or do people generally care about one another? When there's a need, do they rise up to meet the need? I'm proud to say I believe the congregation I attend, Holland Park Church in Simpsonville, South Carolina, is a congregation of people who love one another. We could always do better, of course. We're not quite where we need to be, but I believe we strive for that, and I believe if you came to our church, you would feel that way. So I just wanted to brag on my church a little bit, but whether your church is that way or not, you need to be that way toward your brother. You need to love them the way Jesus loves us. Okay? Hey, come back tomorrow for the next edition of Take 5.